Hey guys, tonight, let me ask you something. Have you ever stood in a room where someone's arrogance was so heavy, it felt like the air itself grew sharp? Maybe it was a boss in a meeting, dismissing you with a smirk. Maybe it was a family member speaking over you, insisting their way was the only way. Or maybe it was a so-called friend who used your mistakes as a stage for their own ego. In those moments, most of us either bite our tongue in silence or we fight back, saying something we later regret. Both leave us drained, both leave us shaken. But what if, instead of breaking down or lashing out, you carried 5 phrases so powerful that they could disarm arrogance itself without raising your voice, without losing your peace, without ever stepping into their game? The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus knew that arrogance is never true strength. It is a mask, a loud parade meant to hide smallness inside. As Seneca wrote, arrogance is the desire to seem bigger, when in fact you are smaller. True greatness doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to dominate. True greatness is revealed in the stillness of your response, in the strength of your composure. And that's what we're going to uncover together. 5 phrases, simple, timeless, stoic at the core, that can stop arrogance in its tracks and remind everyone around you where real strength lives. So tonight, stay with me. Let's walk slowly, phrase by phrase. Let's learn how to carry words that don't wound, but words that dissolve arrogance like smoke, leaving you untouched, unbothered, and respected. Now, let's begin. Phrase 1. You have a right to think that way. There is a quiet power in this phrase. Picture this: someone confronts you in a heated meeting. They roll their eyes at your suggestion, speaking with contempt. The whole room braces for conflict. Everyone expects you to fire back, to defend yourself, to prove them wrong. Instead, you lean back slightly, breathe, and with a calm tone say, "You have a right to think that way." The effect is instant. The tension doesn't explode. It dissolves. See, arrogance thrives on resistance. The arrogant person feeds on conflict. They want to prove their superiority by dragging you into a verbal duel. When you respond with calm acknowledgement, you don't fuel the fire. You take away the oxygen. Suddenly, their performance has no audience, no spark to ignite. But make no mistake, this is not agreement. It's not surrender. You're not saying they are right. You're simply stating the obvious truth. Every human being is entitled to their perspective. And by doing so, you signal 2 things. First, you are not afraid of their opinion. Second, you are not trapped by it. This is what Epictetus meant when he said, "No one can harm your mind without your permission." Arrogance only hurts us when we let it enter our inner world. By calmly answering, "You have a right to think that way," you guard your mind like a fortress. You show that their words may echo outside your walls, but inside, peace reigns untouched. Imagine applying this not just at work, but in daily life. A family member makes a cutting remark at dinner. Instead of arguing, you pause, breathe, and reply. "You have a right to think that way." Suddenly, they have nowhere to go. Their dagger lands on water, it makes a splash, then disappears. Or think of relationships. A partner accuses you unfairly, speaking out of anger. You don't escalate. You don't grovel. You don't react with venom. You stay steady and say, "You have a right to think that way." You give them space to feel. but you do not let their storm drown your ship. This phrase embodies Marcus Aurelius's wisdom. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Strength is not in silencing others. Strength is in refusing to be enslaved by their need to be heard louder. Now, here's the beauty when you use this phrase. You often find silence follows. The arrogant person expected combat, but instead they face serenity. And serenity disarms arrogance faster than any insult ever could. Over time, you'll notice something even greater. People watching your colleagues, your family, your friends, they'll see your calm and admire it. They'll see that you didn't bend, but you didn't break either. They'll see what the Stoics knew all along, that composure is the loudest proof of strength. So next time arrogance enters the room, remember pause, breathe, reply. Don't rush to prove, don't rush to fight. Just calmly answer. You have a right to think that way. And in that moment, you win not by defeating them, but by defeating the need to be disturbed at all. Because true mastery isn't controlling the arrogant, it's controlling yourself. Phrase 2. That's an interesting point. You've given me something to think about. There is a quiet elegance in this phrase. At first glance, it seems harmless, almost too gentle. But beneath its calm surface lies a devastating power, because it strikes arrogance where it is weakest, in its hunger for rejection, in its expectation of a fight. Think of it this way. The arrogant person craves resistance. They expect you to roll your eyes, to snap back, to tell them they are wrong. That's the stage they've built, the theater where they perform. And the moment you step into that play, they win. But what happens when, instead of rejecting their point, you look at them calmly, maybe even with a small nod, and you say, "That's an interesting point. You've given me something to think about." The air changes instantly. Their armor, built for war, is useless in peace. Their hammer falls on soft ground. It makes no echo, no shock, no victory. And suddenly, the person who thought they could dominate you with arrogance is left holding their pride, with nowhere to place it. This is not sarcasm. It's not passive-aggressive. It's not surrender. The key is sincerity of tone, deliberate, steady, calm. You're not handing them a trophy. You're simply refusing to let them drag you into their contest. Seneca once wrote, "Nothing is so arrogant that it cannot be softened by reason." This phrase is the embodiment of that truth, because reason doesn't always come in the form of debate or counterattack. Sometimes reason is simply space, the space you create when you refuse to wrestle with pride. In the workplace, picture this. You're in a heated brainstorming session. A colleague interrupts you, not just to add an idea, but to belittle yours. Their tone drips with superiority. All eyes turn toward you, waiting for a reaction. Everyone expects fire. Everyone expects a clash. But instead, you breathe, steady yourself, and say, "That's an interesting point. You've given me something to think about." The silence afterward is heavier than any argument, because now the room doesn't see you as defeated. They see you as calm, controlled, above the game. And they see your colleague, exposed, swinging fists in a fight that never began. Who wins? The one who stayed composed. In relationships, let's bring it closer to the heart. Imagine you're in an argument with a partner. Their frustration makes them say something sharp, something meant to sting. Normally, you'd respond with your own sharpness, and the cycle would spin out of control. But this time, you take a breath and say, softly but firmly, "That's an interesting point. You've given me something to think about." The effect. The storm pauses. The tone softens. You've surprised them because anger cannot survive where there is no counterattack. Instead of pouring gasoline on the fire, you've poured water. That pause creates space. And in space, reflection grows. Even in darker moments, betrayal by a friend, conflict with someone who has wronged you, this phrase can serve as your shield. Instead of chasing justice through heated words, you anchor yourself in calm by saying, "That's an interesting point. You've given me something to think about." You turn their arrogance into a mirror. They wanted you to flare up, but you refuse. You let their words reveal more about them than they ever will about you. As Epictetus reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. Your calm is your power. Your composure is your victory. This phrase is more than strategy. It's philosophy in action. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. When arrogance tries to provoke arrogance, and you refuse, you break the chain. You demonstrate that you are ruled by reason, not pride. You are not seeking to win. You are seeking to stay free. Free from being pulled into their stage. Free from their hunger for conflict. Free from becoming what you despise. And in that freedom, you command the scene without ever raising your voice." The psychological effect. Here's what makes this phrase so powerful: it transforms the energy of the room. To the arrogant person, it removes their weapon. They can't dominate you if you don't play. To the observers, it signals maturity. They see strength in restraint, authority in serenity. To yourself, it builds discipline. You train your mind to remain steady in the face of provocation. It's like Aikido of the mind. You don't resist the strike. You redirect it. The modern application. You can use this phrase in countless moments. When a boss challenges your idea with condescension. When a friend mocks your choice in front of others. When a stranger on the internet leaves a cruel comment. Instead of meeting arrogance with anger, you meet it with calm reflection. Instead of proving them wrong, you prove yourself untouchable. And the result, respect, authority, peace. So next time arrogance rises before you, remember, pause, breathe, reply. And when you reply, let your words be soft but steady. That's an interesting point. You've given me something to think about, because in that moment, you have not just disarmed arrogance, you have elevated yourself above it. And that is the essence of Stoic strength. Phrase 3. I'd prefer to hear more before I respond. There is a unique kind of authority and patience. The arrogant person thrives on speed-fast arguments, quick dismissals, sharp interruptions. They want you to reply instantly, to meet their fire with fire. Why? Because immediacy traps you in emotion, and emotion is their battlefield. But when you pause, when you lean back, breathe, and calmly say, I'd prefer to hear more before I respond, you change everything. This phrase is not weakness, it is strategy, it is strength. It's a declaration that you do not dance to their rhythm, that you own your pace, that the conversation will unfold on your terms, not theirs. Marcus Aurelius, captured this truth in Meditations. The power to live well lies in choosing how we react. By choosing to delay, by listening fully before speaking, you reveal mastery not just of the situation, but of yourself. In the workplace, picture a boardroom. A colleague pounds the table, raising their voice, trying to corner you with statistics and pride. Everyone turns, expecting a counter-strike. But you don't rush. You let silence breathe. And then you say, steady as stone, I'd prefer to hear more before I respond. The room shifts. Suddenly, you're not the one under pressure, they are. Their arrogance wilts under patience because they realize the performance isn't working. They can't force you into reaction. Instead, you stand as the calm observer, commanding the space not with volume, but with presence. In relationships, now imagine a heated moment with someone you love. Their words cut sharp, anger spilling from a wound you didn't cause. The natural impulse is to defend yourself, to fire back, to make your case. But instead, you breathe, you soften your tone, and you say, I'd prefer to hear more before I respond. Suddenly, the tension loosens. You've given them space to release, space to be heard. And in giving that space, you also give yourself control. You decide not to speak from anger, but from clarity. This is how arguments dissolve into dialogue. This is how relationships survive storms, by creating pauses where anger expected war. Next, think of betrayal. A friend spreads rumors. A colleague takes credit for your work. They confront you with arrogance, expecting you to react in rage. Instead, you look at them, calm as still water, and say, I'd prefer to hear more before I respond. Now the burden shifts. They've shown their cards. You haven't revealed yours. And that terrifies arrogance, because arrogance needs reaction to survive. Seneca warned us, most powerful is he who has himself in his own power. In that pause, in that patience, you prove that you own yourself. They may own the noise, but you own the silence. This phrase is rooted deeply in Stoic practice. The Stoics taught the discipline of assent, the art of not immediately accepting or rejecting what is presented to us. To pause, to reflect, to decide consciously whether a thought deserves entry into our mind. By saying, I'd prefer to hear more before I respond, you practice this discipline in real time. You refuse to be dragged by impulse. You choose to see the full picture before you decide how to act. Epictetus would remind us, first learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak. This phrase embodies that. You don't rush, you don't stumble. You listen fully, then respond with weight, with intention, with clarity. The psychological effect. Here's why this works so powerfully. 1. It interrupts the arrogant rhythm. They expect quick resistance. By pausing, you derail their momentum. 2. It elevates you in the eyes of others. Observers see restraint as wisdom. They see your patience as strength. 3. It builds your own discipline. You train yourself to respond with reason, not reflex. Arrogance is frantic. True authority is calm. The modern application. Try this in daily life. When a coworker pushes too hard in a debate, when a stranger online hurls insults, baiting you for a reaction, when family conflict rises at the dinner table, in each case, arrogance expects speed. You give slowness. Arrogance expects fire. You give water. Arrogance expects ego. You give reason. And in doing so, You don't just disarm the other person, you train yourself to live above provocation. So remember, when arrogance comes charging, don't rush to meet it. Instead, pause, breathe, reply. And let your reply be this: I'd prefer to hear more before I respond. In that moment, you are no longer reacting, you are leading. You are no longer defending, you are governing. Because, as the Stoics knew, true strength is not in speed, but in stillness. Phrase 4. It's interesting how everyone sees the world differently. There's a quiet brilliance in this phrase. It doesn't strike like a sword. It flows like water. It doesn't accuse. It doesn't corner. It doesn't provoke. And yet, it has the power to dissolve arrogance without a single drop of hostility. Why? Because arrogance feeds on the illusion that its view is absolute, that its perspective is the only one that matters. The arrogant person lives in a fortress built of certainty. But this phrase opens a window in that fortress. It reminds them and everyone watching that their opinion is not law. It is only one among billions. When you calmly say, "It's interesting how everyone sees the world differently," you don't challenge their ego directly. You hold up a mirror, showing them that their perspective is small, limited, subjective. You're not attacking. You're simply revealing truth. And truth needs no anger to shine. Epictetus once said, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our interpretation of things." This phrase embodies that wisdom. Every opinion, every belief, every judgment, it's nothing more than interpretation. Reminding arrogance of this fact dismantles its illusion of superiority without ever raising your voice. In the workplace, imagine you're in a strategy meeting. A colleague dismisses your proposal with arrogance, insisting their plan is the only viable path forward. The room stiffens. People expect sparks to fly. But instead of defending yourself with equal fire, you smile slightly and say, "It's interesting how everyone sees the world differently." Now the spotlight shifts. The arrogant colleague has no way to push back without exposing their own intolerance. You've reframed the moment, showing the room that perspectives are many, not one. In that instant, you rise not because you crushed them, but because you refused to shrink before them. In relationships, picture a family conversation, maybe around the dinner table. Someone pushes their opinion with an iron fist, making everyone else feel small. Normally, you'd argue, or perhaps grow silent with resentment. But this time, you remain calm. You sip your water, look them in the eye, and say softly, "It's interesting how everyone sees the world differently." The tension shifts. The arrogance loses its stage. Others feel seen, validated, empowered to speak. And you, the one who introduced this moment of perspective, become the anchor of calm. This is how you transform conflict into connection, without fighting, without yielding, and even in moments of betrayal. This phrase protects you. Say someone mocks you in public, flaunting their supposed superiority. You don't retaliate with venom. You don't plead for understanding. You simply respond. It's interesting how everyone sees the world differently. Suddenly, their attack collapses. They wanted a battle of egos, but you refused. You didn't deny their view, but you also didn't elevate it. You simply placed it alongside countless others. And in doing so, you stripped it of its crown. Seneca taught, "We are all mistaken in our estimation of life. Some consider things of little value great, and some things of great value little. Arrogance is nothing but this error confusing one perspective with ultimate truth. This phrase is your reminder, and their exposure. Philosophically, this phrase is a shield of humility. It affirms a universal truth: no one sees the whole picture. Marcus Aurelius reflected often on this, how every person interprets events through their own limited lens. He reminded himself, everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. When you say, "It's interesting how everyone sees the world differently," you live that wisdom aloud. You remind yourself not to take arrogance personally. And you remind the arrogant that their truth is nothing more than an angle among infinite others. Here's why this works so well. It reframes superiority into subjectivity. Arrogance cannot survive when shown it is not universal. 2. It protects your peace. You refuse to get trapped in their illusion. 3. It elevates you socially. Observers see your maturity, your calm, your broad perspective. Instead of being dragged into a duel, you raise the entire conversation to a higher plane. The modern application: you can use this phrase in countless situations. When politics or religion spark heated debates. When a coworker insists they hold the only answer. When a friend dismisses your life choices as foolish. In each case, instead of locking horns, you open a window. Instead of fighting, you expand the frame. Instead of feeding arrogance, you reveal its smallness. And the result, you stand as the wise one, the one who sees not just the world, but the differences in how the world is seen. So when arrogance insists, when pride proclaims, when superiority tries to suffocate the room, remember: pause, breathe, reply, and let your reply be this: it's interesting how everyone sees the world differently. Because in that moment, you've shifted the stage, you've elevated the conversation, you've shown that the world is bigger than arrogance, and so are you. And that is the very heart of Stoic strength. Phrase 5. If that makes you happy, then that's fine. This is the final phrase. The phrase that ends the game. The phrase that doesn't just deflect arrogance but dissolves it completely. Because in these words lies the ultimate Stoic response: not anger, not submission, but calm detachment. Think about it. What does arrogance want more than anything else? It wants victory. It wants to feel taller by making others smaller. It wants to dominate, to prove, to win. And what happens when, instead of wrestling in the mud, you look the arrogant person in the eye and say, "If that makes you happy, then that's fine." The fight is over before it begins. Why? Because you've revealed the truth they desperately want to hide, that their arrogance isn't strength, it's need. A need to be validated. A need to prove themselves. A need to feel happy through the illusion of superiority. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When you say this phrase, you're exposing that their happiness is fragile, resting on your reaction. And when you withhold that reaction, their supposed power crumbles like sand in the tide. In the workplace, picture a coworker bragging endlessly about how they did a project better than you. They expect you to defend yourself, to fight, to try to reclaim credit, but instead, you smile faintly and say, "If that makes you happy, then that's fine." The room shifts. Everyone watching realizes you weren't defeated, you simply refused to compete. And in that refusal lies real authority. Because power is not in proving yourself louder. Power is in not needing to prove at all. In relationships, consider a heated moment with a partner. They're upset, saying something harsh, trying to corner you into reacting. Normally, you'd feel your blood rise, your defenses flare. But instead, you let the storm pass through you and say, "If that makes you happy, then that's fine." Not in sarcasm, not in mockery, but with genuine calm. Now the energy changes. Suddenly, the storm loses its thunder. The lightning fades, because the arrogant attack no longer finds a target. You've shown that your peace does not depend on their validation or their provocation, even in betrayal. This phrase holds power. Imagine someone mocking you, flaunting their supposed superiority in front of others. They want your anger. They want your reaction. They want the satisfaction of seeing you shaken. Instead, you answer gently, "If that makes you happy, then that's fine." The silence that follows is louder than any argument, because you've turned the spotlight back on them, exposing the hollowness of their act. Everyone sees it now. The arrogance was never power, only performance. And you, the one who refused to play, emerge as the stronger. Seneca reminded us, "He who is brave is free." And in that moment, your bravery is in your refusal to be chained by their ego. You are free. This phrase is the highest form of detachment. It embodies the Stoic principle that nothing outside of us has power unless we grant it. Epictetus would say, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." Here, you choose not to let another's arrogance disturb your peace. You choose to remain anchored within, unmoved by their need for validation, by saying, "If that makes you happy, then that's fine." You step outside the game entirely. You reveal that arrogance never had power over you. It only had the illusion of power, granted by reaction. Why does this phrase devastate arrogance? 1. It ends the conflict. There's no comeback. If they push further, they only expose their insecurity. 2. It reframes the dynamic. You're not fighting, you're observing. They become the one trapped by their need to win. 3. It elevates your presence. Observers see calm detachment as strength. They see you as untouchable. It's the final move in the Stoic playbook: don't resist. Don't yield, transcend. The modern application: use this phrase when a colleague competes unnecessarily, a friend brags to belittle you, a stranger insults you online. Each time, you'll notice the same thing: the arrogant one collapses into silence because you've removed the stage they were performing on. You're not angry, you're not bitter, you're simply free. So when arrogance comes knocking one last time, don't step into the ring, don't wrestle, don't resist. Pause, breathe, reply. And let your reply be this: "If that makes you happy, then that's fine." Because that's the final lesson. Arrogance never had power. It only had what you chose to give it. And when you give it nothing, when you stand firm in your peace, you've already won. As Marcus Aurelius whispered through the centuries, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And with that, the game is over. So tonight, we've walked through 5 phrases, 5 quiet shields that turn arrogance into silence and transform conflict into peace. Each one is not just a line to memorize, but a posture to carry, a way of standing tall without raising your voice, a way of protecting your mind without losing your dignity. Remember, arrogance is never true power. It is only noise, and noise fades when it meets stillness. Seneca told us, "No man can be made smaller by humility. By choosing calm words over sharp retorts, you show strength that arrogance cannot reach. So when the world presses on you with pride, pause, breathe, reply with serenity, and let your peace be your victory." And if tonight's journey gave you even a little more strength, a little more calm, then let's keep walking this path together. Subscribe only if this voice, this way, feels like a companion to you. Share your thoughts below, not just for me, but for those who will read and find courage in your words. Now, breathe deeply. Let the noise of the day fade. Carry these phrases with you, and as you close your eyes, whisper to yourself, "I am untouchable because I govern myself." Good night. Sweet dreams.